Comic art fans, welcome. It's going to be a great afternoon, man. We're all going to be here talking to great creators and displaying some amazing art. And I'm very happy to start things off. I'm John Suntress from the Word Balloon Podcast. You can find my stuff, my interviews at wordballoon.com. But I'm very happy to welcome my old friend, Alex Saviuk, the fine artist who's done so much great work over the years for Marvel and DC and the SpiderMan comic strip. In fact, as I always like to point out, right there in my frame, I don't have zoom-ins, but we have other examples. Those are two daily SpiderMan comic strips that Alex was kind enough to sell me a while ago. So, Alex, great to see you, man.
Hey, nice to see you too, John. Here we are once again. It's always fun to get talking with you about just about anything. So, but here we are on Comic Art Fans. I did some postings on Comic Art Fans last night under a new heading, Alex Saviuk's Marvel Characters. And it seems that as quickly as I was posting, people were sending me emails on, hey, what's the price of this and what's the price of that? And throughout the evening and into this morning, I ended up having about 4 dozen, just inquiries at least. And we ironed out a couple of issues with, actually that particular section that we were putting prices in yesterday. I read the bottom where it says, this is only a private place. Nobody else can see this. So, yeah, hopefully we ended up clearing that up. So if anybody looks online right now, and I can't see it, obviously, when I look at my own postings, hopefully that the other people will be able to see, some pricings, etc.
Absolutely, man. We've got the banner, or I had the banner up showing where people can go to see your page, and I will put it in the chat as well, everybody. So it's good to see everybody, and everyone's just checking in and saying hello. Let's talk. Like, first, you broke through at DC.
Yes, correct? I did back in 1977. I had gone to the School of Visual Arts in New York City from 1974 to 1976, just for a 2-year stint. Pretty much took the classes I wanted to take because I was a transfer student after being pre-med at Hofstra University in Long Island and also at York College in Queens, Jamaica, Queens. Bunch of credits got transferred over, and so whenever I go to registration, I'd say, oh, no, I got that already. Let me just take this stuff. So I was taking illustration classes, etc., painting, and most notably a cartooning sequential art class with Will Eisner. So I studied with Will for a while, and after I got done with that, and seemed like, I'm not saying that there wasn't any place else to go. The fact is, I think if Joe Kubert would have opened up his school right after I thought I was done with visual arts, and I think he opened it in 77, so I was done with visual arts in 76, and then I was working on my, I'd say, portfolio. I published my own fanzine. I got the fanzine out to a number of places. One of them in particular was Phil Suling, who was the big dealer out here on the East Coast, as opposed to Bud Plant on the West Coast. Okay, and distributor, that's what I mean, not the dealer. He bought a number of copies from me, had it at his table at a convention about a month after that. And I went past his table, asked him about it. He said, people looking at it, there's some interest. And then within a half an hour, I got paged back to his table because there was this, gentleman thumbing through my magazine who was about maybe 5'6", big smile on his face, probably in his 60s, shirt and tie on. And I got introduced to the president of DC Comics, Saul Harrison, at the time.
Wow, sure.
And Saul obviously liked what I was doing, asked me if I was working. I said, no, looking. And he said, hey, how would you like to work for us at DC? So I had to go set up an appointment with Vince Coletta, the then art director. And that was, let's say, the Wednesday after that particular convention incident. And then I left there with a 1-page mystery story, which was, I guess, maybe some way of giving me a little training ground, working with somebody else's stories, other than me writing my own stuff and drawing what I want. now I have to interpret somebody else's words. And so that was a 1-page story, mystery thing. And then I got a 7-page sci-fi story and then a 5-page war story. So they were kind of putting me through the gamut just to see how I would interpret, I guess, other genres, other writers. And then at one particular point, I think it was in July of 1977, I was delivering a mystery story to Murray Boltinoff, and Vince Colletta, grabs me in the, in his office and says, "Hey, how would you like to draw Green Lantern?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, come on, Julie Schwartz needs somebody." Introduces me to Julie Schwartz, says, "Hey, Julie, this is the kid I was telling you about. He's better than Gil Kane." And I said, "What? No, no, no." And so Julie, I think that went over his head. He just said, "What makes you think you could draw Green Lantern?" And I said, "Well, I'm a big fan of the character and a big fan of Gil Kane." So he asked me to do a couple of sample pages of, I guess, Green Lantern in action, doing constructs, flying. I brought those in a couple of days later, and I left with my first Green Lantern, Green Arrow script by Denny O'Neil for GLGA number 100.
Wow.
And I ended up working on it for about maybe a year and a half. I did 15 stories. In between, there was some Mike Grell inventories that they popped in just to use them up. And then simultaneously, in the last 6 months that I was working on Green Lantern, I also got to draw the Flash. And what was great about the Flash was, even though I'm going to say I kind of lamented not going to the Kubert School, but I was already involved in comics, the Flash was being edited by Ross Andru, who had come over from Marvel after drawing there, and he came to DC, and he started, obviously editing, doing cover sketches for just about everything. Yeah. So he was real busy, and kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot about his brand of storytelling, a lot of which is still evident in my work today.
That's
and
awesome.
So
yeah.
So then with the Flash, I basically got out of DC for a while because I got involved in some heavy duty advertising projects. One that we had discussed earlier, called a poster for this movie called The Arabian Adventure.
Yes, we talked about that on the last Word.
Yeah, it was a big, big project. Took me about 3 weeks to do, primarily because I was on grand jury duty at the time. And I didn't realize I could get out of it because I was a freelance artist. And I figured, oh, man, I got to do this. So I was doing jury duty by day and drawing my tail off at night. My wife, who was a production artist and a good artist in her own right, she was helping me lay down flat colors, and then I would go in there and beef them up and the whole bit. And she's always helped me throughout the years, whether I need panels ruled, panel borders ruled out, or if she's filling in blacks for me, or even doing certain backgrounds where you can use a ruler or a French curve. So at any rate, we got that done. And then there were more advertising jobs promised me, but they came in sporadically. And eventually I said, I got to go back to comics, because even though it doesn't pay as well as advertising, it's steady. It's always there. Or that's the way I felt about it. Sure. So I went back and I started working with Julie Schwartz again in his Superman line, primarily Superman Family, doing Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane stories and some Superboy stuff. And eventually I got to do my first Superman story, which was in DC Presents number 46, which was Superman and the Global Guardians. And that was about 1982. And for 4 years from then, I was working on Superman and Action Comics. I was working on other Superman stories. I was also doing backup stories in Action Comics like Aquaman, Airwave, The Atom. I also got to do Hawkman in the World's Finest book, which was a big 180-page giant or something. And
yeah,
so I got to draw most of all the characters that they had. And then some, if not in a feature, I got to draw them in a cameo. So, yeah, I got to draw Wonder Woman. She was in, actually, I think, Flash 275, when the Flash goes kind of gaga and goes up to the JLA satellite, and everybody's trying to subdue him because he's going nuts. His wife just died.
Here, as someone points out, Bronze is Gold. I don't know if that's Bill or not. You got to draw the death of Iris Allen in the Flash?
I did, yes.
Wow. That's a phenomenal moment.
It was kind of an emotional thing for me, because I was only married a year at that time. And, deeply in love with my wife then, as I am now, 44 years later. Okay, but still newlywed. And his Flash, Barry Allen, pretty much kind of a newlywed also. I mean, he and Iris West had been dating forever. And then finally they got married. And then, so shortly after that, his wife gets taken away from him. So, I kind of try to emote through my drawings between Barry and I guess whatever colleagues he had going on at that time. And everybody was feeling pretty lousy. And I was feeling lousy drawing it. But I just wanted to get my point across that, how badly he was feeling.
Carrie Bates writing. I was going to say,
Carrie Bates was writing at that time, right? And Carrie Bates also was writing Superman. So actually, what happened was, I guess, towards the end of my tenure at DC, we're going to November of 1985 now. I'm working primarily on Superman stuff for Julie. And let's see, everybody who was doing Superman at the time, the writers and the artists, inkers, we all got invited to go out to a lunch through the auspices of Jeanette Kahn, the president, Dick Giordano, the art director, a couple of other, Joe Orlando. They took us out to a lunch, and we thought, wow, we must be doing really good stuff here. This is great. So, but unfortunately, it was the reverse. They said, oh, you guys are doing great stuff, but the books aren't selling. So we have to revamp Superman. We got to bring in some new blood. Don't worry, you guys will have plenty of work. But we're bringing in Marv Wolfman and John Byrne and Jerry Ordway, and they're going to be the staple of our new Superman reboot. Because I mean, put it this way: in a day and age where comic books needed to sell 100,000 copies to break even, Superman was selling something like 89,000, and they were holding on to it primarily through the licensing. Between the Superman pillowcases and the underwear and the socks and God knows what else, Superman, they were able to keep that book going so that at least it's out there in the public.
Sure.
But I think once John Byrne and Marv Wolfman and those guys came in, I think the sales went up again, thankfully, for the company.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is the end of November of 85. And I was coming in on the day after President's Day, in February of 86, and I was bringing in a Superman story for Action Comics, and Julie said, "Hey, listen, I don't have another story for you. I got one left under my watch, and I have to give it to Kurt Swan. I owe it to him." I said, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem."
Wow! So yeah, okay. That was the closeout of Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and he gave it to Kurt.
Right. Wow. Because Kurt had been doing Superman since, somewhere in the 50s, I think.
Right.
Or even in the late 40s. I mean, he was doing it for a long time.
He was the signature Superman artist, absolutely.
Yeah. And even though when I first met him, one or two occasions in the bullpen, I said, "Hey, so, after all this time, are you still really into drawing?" He goes, "Well, to be honest with you, I'd rather be playing golf." So I thought this is before I was playing golf, so I didn't see, why would you want to just sit there and hit this little ball and go running after it? I'm playing tennis, I'm getting a good workout. But hey, he loved playing golf. And I think his wife was a realtor, so, they had double income anyway. But even after Superman was done, all of a sudden you got to see Kurt Swan doing Aquaman stories and a few other things. Yeah. When they told me they had nothing left for me, I immediately called up John Romita Sr. across town at Marvel Comics because I had known him since I was in high school, having gone to high school with his eldest son and his youngest son, John Romita Jr., who is 4 years younger than I am to the day. So even though I look like, Colonel Sanders to a point, JR looks like he could be my son, but hey, he's 4 years younger. All right. But at any rate, God bless him. No, John's a great guy.
Johnny's great, man. And Johnny Sr. is terrific too. Absolutely.
Oh,
man.
Yeah. It's hard to believe that when I first met John Sr., I was in high school. I was a senior in high school. I'm 17. And John Romita Sr. is 39 years old. My son right now is 39 years old. So at the time when you're 17, you're talking to a 39-year-old. I mean, this guy is, well, number one, he's an artistic hero genius, and he's a dad and the whole thing. And hey, Ron, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that commission. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And I got to come over his house, and on his drawing table, he had a page that he was inking of Gil Kane's pencils on Amazing Spider-Man right there on the drawing board. So I saw half inks, right? And right next to that were pencils of a Fantastic Four page because John was just starting to follow Jack Kirby on the FF. Jack just left for DC. It got thrown in John's lap, and he told me how nervous he was that he was following Jack Kirby, and Jack was the bomb. I mean, we all know that. And at the height of his powers and the peak of his career back in 1970, and still, gosh, all these worlds and stuff coming off the top of his head, which he gave to DC Comics. But at any rate, John's task was to go ahead and work on the FF. So I got to see original artwork from him on his drawing table, which kind of was, kind of blew me away, right?
Oh, 100%, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So at any rate, to flash forward then to 1986, I call him up and he says, "Hey, what's the matter?" And I said, "I got no more work from DC." He goes, "Hey, well, come on over, bring your latest, Xeroxes and leave them on my table. We need fill-ins all the time." And so he says, "Well, ... because the guys here are constantly late. You could make a living just doing fill-ins." So I, walked across town, met with him, dropped the stuff off, and that was a Tuesday. And by Thursday, I had received a phone call from an editor named Mike Higgins, who was editing Iron Man, and he needed an Iron Man fill-in. So on Friday, I got to Marvel and walked out of there with my first job, Iron Man number 211.
That's awesome. Now, before we go into detail about Marvel, Bill Byers has an interesting question. Could you tell us a little bit about your time doing the packaging art for the Kenner Superpowers toy line? And one of the reasons why, he says, I have the original card back art for Steppenwolf that you did. So, yeah, tell us about that gig in particular.
Yeah, one of the good things about working in, both companies, but DC, they had so much licensing going on. So when they came to me and they would say, "Hey, listen, you want to do some card art?" It would basically pay, I think, twice what a page would pay. And so you go, wow, just for that one figure in the card. And then sometimes they would also be the little comic book that was inside. And I got to draw at least 2, if not 3 of those. And again, those things paid, if not full page rate, at least page rate and a half or something. And they were tiny and there were 2 panels on a page. So you were making out like a bandit and having fun drawing these other characters at the same time. Yeah, so that's what happened. They approached me initially to do some of the, I'm not going to say the offshoot characters, but I got to work on some of the Kirby characters like Steppenwolf and Desaad.
Sure.
Yeah, and the Parademons, if I'm not mistaken, right? When they were all red and orange, not looking like Spy Smasher with wings in the Snyder cut.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and let's see. Then I also got to do, I think, backgrounds on a couple, but I also did card art. I did the card art on Green Arrow, Red Tornado, Plastic Man.
Cool.
Some of the later ones, Steppenwolf, and I'm trying to something Pharaoh, the Golden Pharaoh, and a few others. And I think there were 2 waves. One where I had to do Green Arrow and a couple of the regular guys, and then the second wave had the guys I just mentioned plus Cyborg and a few others. And yeah. So I mean, I've had that card art returned to me over the years, and quite honestly, I guess people over the years had also, one fan in particular asked me if I had that stuff, and I said, sure. And I got in touch with a friend of mine who's also a comic art dealer, and I asked him, "What do you think I should charge for this stuff?" And he told me, and I said, "Well, okay." And it was quite a bit of money for one page of stuff. And so basically, that one particular fan cleaned me out. Sorry, although I do have a couple of things left that recently I had gotten in touch with that particular fan and asked him, "Hey, do you know where this is from?" I went back to Joey Cavalieri, who was doing a lot of special projects. Bob Lazakis. I asked them, "Hey, do you know what this is from?" And they couldn't remember. And there were, a couple of the new Brainiac that Gil Kane designed, with all the big head with the tentacles and stuff.
Yes, the more
sort of like Brainiac meets Cthulhu. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. And then there was, I did this one story where Superman, I guess, got exposed to red kryptonite. And he grew horns, okay? So now as Clark Kent, he wore his hat all the time, even when he was inside the office. And then he borrowed Batman's mask and his cowl and his cape. And he said, hey, can I borrow this for a while? Just because, I got these stupid horns. I got to wait for this to wear off. So it was like a Batman Superman thing. So
that's awesome.
In close-ups, I got to draw quite a bit of Batman. But then, the long shots where, people look at him and go like, what's wrong? Something's wrong with this picture, Superman wearing Batman suit, And I think there was one line of dialogue where some guy said, hey, it's not Halloween. What the hell's going on here? So anyway, so there was this one shot of Superman with the horns, and then a couple of other little things here and there, but nobody could figure out, what it's from. So henceforth, I can't stick a price on it because I don't know what the heck it's from,
Oh, that's interesting because, I would imagine, the uniqueness of that combination of design and everything's got to be great.
Yeah.
I would think somebody would want that.
I also did, those Kenner Superpowers things. I also did, I guess, some T-shirt designs for them, which I never got to see, which would have been kind of neat. I did a couple of these, coloring book, kids activity books.
Sure.
With Lex Luthor and Superman. And then there's even one which was supposed to be Superman ends up meeting Santa Claus at the end of the story. It was only, let's say, 4 pages, about 16 panels. And on the last page, he meets Santa Claus, and it's still done in pencil. And I think I might have just practiced my hand in inking a couple of panels here and there, so it's just like partial inks. But I did that. And there were a number of other things that I really can't recall because I don't have any Xeroxes or anything of that stuff where I could look through it and go, oh, well, that's cool. My style is such a, it's like an amalgam of so many other styles that if I see sometimes I don't see myself, but other people do. They go, oh, yeah, that's an Alex Saviuk. I said, really? How can you tell?
Wow. No, I hear you, man. Yeah. Well, I want to show some of the stuff that you've put in your gallery that is for sale. And cool. Along with your we've got Marvel Interiors that you've done, but also a couple examples of the Spider-Man comic strip. And I'll start and show one of the daily strips and ask how'd you get the job working with Stan and Larry? There you go, Stan Lee, Larry Lieber with this great Spider-Man Sandman combination 3-panel thing. But how'd you get the gig here?
Well, the gig actually started in 1997 when I was already out of my contract in late 96 with Marvel. And in 97, Ralph Macchio called me up and said, hey, listen, Stan Lee needs somebody to do the Spider-Man Sundays because this old-time artist named Fred Kita, who was prominent, I think, in the 40s and 50s and 60s, I guess, he, or maybe later than that, I really didn't know how old he was, but he was supposed to just do a couple of fill-ins and ended up doing a year and a half. And and he said, hey, look, I'm retired. I don't want to do this anymore. So they needed somebody. And Ralph called me up, knew I wasn't working for Marvel anymore, but figured, hey, what the heck? So I put some samples together of some of my books, the Web of Spider-Man books, etc., and Spider-Man Adventures, sent that stuff out to Stan. And I guess within a couple of days, I think it was the beginning of the week, end of the week, we still had, answering machines with the tapes in them, right? So we had to come home, push the button, and listen to the tape. So I come home, I think it was a Friday afternoon after going shopping with my wife, and I say, oh, look, we got a message. So I click it, and I hear, hello, Alex, this is Stan Lee. I just want to tell you, I love what you're doing with Spider-Man, and it would be great if we could work together. Wow. I'm telling you right now, I'll just have to tell you one thing. It doesn't pay much, but think of the glory. That's what he told me.
Now, Stan, the license was with Stan, and then Stan paid you guys, correct?
Exactly. It always said Spider-Man by Stan Lee, even though, I think now there's that particular discrepancy of the fact that, even though Stan and Steve Ditko created Spider-Man and Stan and Jack created the FF and all those other characters, everything was still done as a work for hire. So it's not like Stan owned Spider-Man or he owned the FF. The fact that as time went on, they gave creators some more leeway. so that we could get nailed that, Stan. Thank you, Jeff. We got some leeway for us to get royalties, thanks to, let's say, thanks to Jim Shooter and Neil Adams, who really pushed for us to get that. Okay, so consequently, gosh, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Well, getting the gig, the fact that
I'm sorry. Yeah. So then they sent me. Actually, then Stan's assistant calls me up and says, "Listen, Stan would like to see how you would handle a horizontal comic strip." And I said, "Really? He can't tell from the way I draw a vertical comics book?" He goes, "Well, he wants to see your take on how you would do the horizontal panels all in pretty much the same grid." Now, what you just showed was a newspaper strip which Larry Lieber had been penciling already since probably around 1990, if I'm not mistaken. So he'd been on it for a really long time. And when it comes to the daily strips, I only do the inking, and I'll get to that in a minute. But so at any rate, so I did a sample page of Spider-Man up, swinging around, and there's J. Jonah walking down underneath him, and then these two thugs, they start picking on J. Jonah Jameson, and he's getting all scared. Spider-Man webs up the bad guys, hangs them from a light post, and then, swings by, and JJJ is over there giving him the fist, calling him a menace, and the whole bit. I could have handled this myself type of thing. And so at any rate, after I guess Stan saw that, he liked it, and then they sent me my first 2 weeks of script. And so in May of 1997, I got to draw the first 2 Sundays in a Kingpin storyline, which I guess Fred had started, but didn't even want to finish it. And so I got to draw the Kingpin. Got to finally, not finally, I had worked with Joe Sinnott on a few covers back at Marvel in the maybe 4 or 5 years prior to that, because I'm talking 1997. And he inked. There was a new universe, and there was some covers, and he inked something probably in 1986, 87, so 10 years ago, but it was only 1 or 2 pieces. And wow, Joe Sinnott inking me, okay? I mean, how good can it get? Every single week. Man. All right, 52 weeks a year, can't beat it. And I remember finally, after about maybe 2 or 3 months, I had to call Joe to clarify something in the story and the art and what I was giving him. And I said, "Hey, Joe, am I giving you enough, to work with as far as pencils?" And he goes, "Alex, actually, you're kind of handcuffing me." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Your pencils are so tight. I feel so obligated to ink everything that you put down. You're not giving me anything to do." I said, "So what do you want me to do? Like breakdowns?" He says, "Well, just loosen up, he says, "You don't have to make everything look perfect." He says, "I love to spot blacks. Let me do that." So yeah, basically it came down to, I drew a little quicker, so it wasn't super tight pencils, but somebody who could draw as an inker could take that and just go to town with it. Okay.
Sure.
Vince Coletta said ages ago, because he loved tight pencils, he goes, "Al, an inker is an inker. He's not supposed to be a thinker." And I said, "Oh, I see." Okay. Which, I remember telling that to John Romita Sr., and he goes, "Really?" He said that pretty much. He goes, "Well, that's not the way John Romita inks. John Romita looks at your work, looks at the pencil's work, sees what the penciler is trying to give him, and see what he's actually aiming for. We'll give that back to him as much as he can, and then he embellishes." John is that kind of a perfectionist that if he sees something that you've drawn that isn't right, he'll fix it for you, and he'll make you look better than you are. Just like Joe Sinnott. When those new kids on the block would come into Marvel, they would give Joe some of these newbies, and it would get inked, and you'd look at it and you go, "Gee, I can't really tell what the pencils look like, because it looks like it's pretty much 98% Joe," because he had to go in there, fix, and embellish. Sure. And so anyway, just I'm trying to think now. Joe unfortunately passed away a year ago at 92. Wow. So that was 2020, and we started working together in 97. So that was 23 years before that. So he was already in his guess late 60s. I think he retired from mainstream comics at 65. He just didn't.
Okay.
But he said Stan wanted to get him in. Hey, can you do this and can you do that? He goes, Stan, I just want something to keep my hand at it. Like, so he says, would you want to ink the Sundays? And he goes, oh yeah, that's great. And then eventually, more editors would call and say, hey, can you do a cover? Can you do this? So if it wasn't something that had a major deadline, Joe was still good with it, and that gave him a chance. And people were then, all of a sudden saying, hey, do you take commissions? And so from what I understand, he had a commission list a mile long.
I have no doubt. Yeah. Well, again, he was one of those guys that, was the classic Marvel style. Now, Alex isn't selling this, but I want to show a finished Spider-Man Sunday there. And I mean, one of the things I love, and as you've explained to me, Alex, it's really the 6 panels here. This is the story and the kind of stuff you were working on. The top 2 are really kind of standard for a Sunday strip. And I love, in fact, one of my comic strips that I have of yours has you drawing with Larry Lieber that half Peter, half Spider-Man head. And it's so romance comics because poor Aunt May is crying and Peter's thinking, and it's got the thought bubble, and it's like some problems even Spider-Man can't fix. And
exactly.
You love that. I mean, that's why I wanted it so badly. But I do love these collaborations. I mean, that's the thing, man. You're working with Larry Lieber. You're working with Joe.
Well, what happened as far as Larry Lieber goes, let's go back. Let's go forward to February of 2003. And Mike Kelly, Stan's assistant, calls me up and says, hey, listen, the regular inker, John Tartaglione, which I didn't know because the inkers never got a credit. Okay. He has to go into the hospital for some kind of a procedure. Terry Austin already inked 1 week, but he can't do a second. Could you do a week of dailies and ink them? I said, yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. So anyway, I did that week. I had a good time with it. And I guess I probably, embellished way the heck too much on it because when Jim Salicrup, my old editor, saw it, he goes, I don't see Larry in this strip at all. He says, you really went to town on it. I said, I just kind of didn't know, how far I should take it. Okay. And so, again, as an inker who can draw, I kind of let myself go a little bit too much. But still, they liked it. And I just said, hey, look, if, John ever needs a break or something, you need somebody to fill in, just give me a holler. And unfortunately, they gave me that holler in November of 2003 when they told me that John had passed away from throat cancer.
Wow.
So I guess he had that particular procedure in February. Maybe it was going through chemo and radiation or whatever, and it wasn't working. So he passed away, and I basically inherited the strip into late 2003. So I was penciling the Sundays, inking the dailies, and hey, it was a good, mainstay for me to have, 2 days of work every week, knowing that if nothing else came in, I always had that. So
100%.
4 weeks of that, paid the mortgage and, electric and the water bill. So I was good,
Now they wondered about you storytelling horizontally. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Sam wanted to know, you yourself, did you find any particular challenges with strip art?
Well, put it this way. Back in the early days of regular comics, I was doing 6-panel grids vertically. So 2, 2, and 2. And here you're doing 3 and 3. So basically, they're not squares. They're more a little bit rectangular. You have to kind of think of it as a wide screen. Well, they are almost squares. A little bit more of a rectangular than a square. But still, it's a very, very stable type of a format. So you got to put everything in there regardless of what, the script called for. And going back to when I first met Jim Shooter, he was saying that he was always in favor of the 6-panel grid. And he would always like to take new artists and show them this one particular page from Avengers #3 where it was an action scene going on, and there was a 6-panel grid, and I think the 1, 2, 3, the 4th panel had some dialogue at the top. So now you got almost like a widescreen situation, like we're encountering right here, about this much to draw in.
Absolutely.
And you had a train on a track, and you had the Hulk on top of the train throwing the caboose at Iron Man and Giant Man at the left side of the frame. All of that was in that panel. And so, Shooter said, hey, listen, if Jack Kirby can do this, tell the story in this 6-panel grid, everybody can tell us any kind of a story in a 6-panel grid. So if there was any kind of a challenge that I would say was, aside from the fact that when we would call for Spider-Man walking up a building or walking down a building, and you get to draw that big forced perspective, okay? Well, the same thing that a film director has, although he has the benefit of motion where you can pan and follow the guy crawling up the building, we didn't have that. So if we're going to do a worm's eye view, I mean, that building had to really go up, in perspective. And quite honestly, after a while, it didn't bother me. I just kind of, got myself into that mindset as that, well, this is the blank panel and I have to fill it up however it has to be done,
I understand. Obviously here again, a great example, you have Spider-Man with Sandman there. There were also guest stars, right? I mean, other heroes would pop up in the daily strip and the Sunday strip too, right?
Well, what was really nice was that when I was working at Marvel, obviously having drawn Spider-Man for such a long time, I never really got a chance to draw too many of the other characters. Except if they appeared in Spider-Man in a cameo or something to that, or I did a special project.
Okay.
So when the Marvel movies started coming out in the year 2000, now mind you, that's like 3 years of me just doing Sundays. And as time went on, I would call up Stan's office and say, hey, you think maybe we can get, somebody from the X-Men into the story? And hence we did twice, and it ended up being Wolverine. Okay. Awesome. And then I remember when, Doctor Strange was coming out, I said, hey, can we get a Doctor Strange storyline? And they accommodated me on that. Cool. And they also on Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, I just got to do Rocket Raccoon instead of the whole team. I asked for the Fantastic Four. I got the Fantastic Four in on one Sunday, and then they had to go off on some mission, but they left the Thing behind, so it got to be Spider-Man and the Thing and the Mole Man. Yeah, Mole Man was one of my favorite characters, and I had this story. I had sort of a plot synopsis, and I said, hey, how about if MJ's in the desert and there's a sinkhole, she falls in it, the Mole Man captures her and now falls in love with her, but Spider-Man and Peter Parker have put a tracer on her, so now he knows he's in the desert, and he goes and he's asking the FF for help, and like I said, he gets the Thing.
Hilarious.
And so got to draw the Thing and Spider-Man in the Fantastic Four car heading off to Mole Man's Island, and that big beast coming out of the ground, and they KO it and they go down under. And it was a lot of fun. So I got to do that. Like I said, Ant-Man, Black Widow was in there at one point.
Wow.
Iron Man. Actually got to draw sort of a Tony Stark look-alike with that weird little goatee that Robert Downey Jr. had, right? And plus the fact I had to draw the sort of like the movie Iron Man of the day. That was pretty tough because it wasn't the simple Iron Man that I drew back in number 211.
Okay.
But yeah, we got to do Daredevil in there, it was a lot of fun getting those deaths. We had a Thor storyline with Lady Sif up in Asgard, and got to draw the Warriors 3 in a panel, and Loki. It was a lot of fun.
I don't know if you know the answer to this. TJ James. I hear my echo. Forgive me, everybody. Was it due to the Spidey comic strip that Stan and Marvel got involved with the Defenders of the Earth? Do you know this?
I'm trying to think of why they would, but put it this way: the Defenders of the Earth was part of a subline of Marvel called the Star Comics. And also involved in the Star Comics was Chuck Norris and the Karate Commandos.
I remember that.
And maybe there were a few others that I don't really recall. But I think it was just for a way for Marvel to somehow get involved with that particular television medium to see if they could sell more books and make more bucks. plain and simple.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that particular project failed because I drew the Defenders of the Earth for actually 5 issues, and after 4 issues they canceled it. So there's an unpublished 5th issue. And Chuck Norris, same thing. I drew the 4th issue of Chuck Norris after there were 3 Steve Ditko stories that were inked by different people, and they all had different looks. With my Chuck Norris story, they sent me, let's say a dozen photographs of Chuck from different angles so that I could get some semblance of a likeness in there. And I think I did, although that like platinum blonde hair was not Chuck Norris from day one. So that was kind of tough enough to carry, but hey, it still worked for the comics.
Do you have any of those Defenders or Chuck Norris pages still?
I still have some Chuck Norris pages. I got 2 covers that were done for the 5th issue that never got published. And I have no, I don't have the artwork for the 5th issue. It went back in there and none of it was ever returned to me. So, but I've got Xeroxes of that 5th story. And as far as the Defenders of the Earth, I've got issues 1, 3, and 5 in their entirety, and I have all the covers.
Very cool. If people haven't gone to your gallery, the URL is there. It's also in the chat, everybody. So, by all means, go there. And I want to show some other images. It's funny, as we mentioned, some of the guest stars that were in the Spider-Man strip. This is a great cover that Alex did for a Honolulu convention. And as you can see there, it looks like, obviously, the MCU versions of the characters are all well represented in this cover.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. No, and also you got Tombstone fighting Spider-Man. That's another thing that you've got right now in your gallery.
One thing about Tombstone is that Jerry Conway first conceived the character and then sent me a paragraph of what he felt the character should look like. So I got involved in the design. So when people ask me, so did you design, how did you come about to design Tombstone? And I said, well, it's a co-design. I didn't come up with it and say, hey, Jerry, I got an idea of. He had the idea and passed it on to me, and we obviously came up with what we came up with. So that's one of my claims to fame as far as co-designing. So when the Spider-Man in the Multiverse, animated movie came out, Tombstone was part of that. That was pretty cool to see him on the screen in his black suit,
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, it's fantastic. Is it here? Where's the I wanted to bring up an image, but I guess I don't have it handy. But I believe it's on your gallery. Jeff Wedding says the Wolverine MJ strip is superb. That's excellent. Geek Tex, Alex is the best. One of the nicest artists I've met in person, and such a great talent. A lot of people have in the chat have been commenting how great it is to meet you at shows, Alex, and that's great. And you and I
appreciate that.
We were just in Baltimore, and I saw you in action doing that stuff. In fact, I always got to bring it up.
Yeah, just curious now. I did make adjustments on the Comic Art Fans postings, the art postings that I put up yesterday. If anybody new is seeing those for the first time, are they seeing any numbers on there as far as prices? There's no $sign. It's just a number. I was wondering if they're up there. Are they up there? Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. No, I looked even before we went on the air, and that is absolutely the case. So for people who've inquired, and if Alex hasn't responded directly, if you go back to the gallery, you'll see the prices on each piece. And also as people brand new are going to the gallery as well. Cool. And this is just a smattering. I mean, also people can go to where can people go to buy more pages and strips and stuff and commissions?
Well, they can go to my website, which is simply alexsaviuk.com. There I've got certain other samples, and you can always just go there and request, a commission. Speaking of which commissions, I have, let's see, do I have something here to show?
I've got something if not. So
no, I do. I was kind of going through some stuff here yesterday, and I said, oh, if we get to it, I can always show somebody some of this stuff here. And of course, now that I say that, I can't find it. So while we keep talking, I'll keep looking.
Here's a commission you did of the Phantom back in the day.
Yep.
And so you've been doing a lot of Phantom work lately for European comic publishers and stuff, and Australian comic publishers.
Yes, that's correct.
And also, I made Alex draw this beautiful sketch card because one of my favorite DC stories that I remember buying as a kid, and it absolutely created this fascination I have for the Crimson Avenger. I had to have Alex draw me. I bought him breakfast, and as a ransom, I'm like, I'm giving you a sketch card, and I want a Crimson Avenger. And you more than delivered with this beautiful headshot of the Avenger. I don't know why, man. It's that because certainly he started as kind of a cross between a Shadow and a Green Hornet knockoff. But for me, it's the superhero outfit and that fantastic cowl with the fin and his sunburst sort of logo and everything. I just adore that. And you nailed it.
I think, didn't he have a sidekick too?
Yes, Wing. Much like Tito, Wing was his sidekick, and if spoilers for a 60-year-old story or a 50-year-old story, that great Justice League Justice Society crossover where they discover the missing 7 Soldiers of Victory.
Yes,
and all on the cover. There's a grave, and it's like, who is the 7th soldier that didn't make it? And it was Wing. It was Crimson Avenger's sidekick that died during the story and everything. So.
And then the Crimson Avenger himself followed him into the into the ether, into the cloud, into the heavens, by blowing himself up, sacrificing himself in the river because he knew he was terminally ill.
Drawn by Alex Saviuk and written by Len Wein, the final adventure of the Crimson Avenger. We discussed it on our word balloon conversation that we just had a couple of weeks ago. And no, man, like I said, that story just blew my mind. And I went back and found the JLA JSA 7 Soldiers crossover. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of a bear for any of that Crimson Avenger stuff. Again, it's just a great street level character. And man, yeah, you drew the hell, only 8 pages. And you guys just drew and wrote the hell out of that story. It's one of my favorites. It was it in DC Presents?
It was in DC Presents, and if I'm not mistaken, it might have been. I'm picturing the cover right now. George Perez drew the cover, and I think it was Superman and might have been the Flash, if I'm not mistaken. But George drew the cover, and there was a little circle on the bottom right, which said also whatever happened to the Crimson Avenger.
Yep.
And, I don't remember what number it was. Those numbers escaped me because I did a bunch of. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, this is the final sequence.
Yep.
And like it says,
I'm happy I got to wear that uniform one last time, and then I feel truly alive, and then
boom,
ba-boom.
And it's such a great story, everybody. And it's on the one hand, the cops come and they find the boat wreckage and they're like, we don't know who saved us or whatever. But there's one woman with her child at the end of the story who saw him. And it's like, we owe our lives to the Crimson Avenger. So his last great sacrifice is not done in vain. His story will be passed on. The legend will continue. And truly, man, it touched the hell out of me 40 years ago reading it. And to this day, I still think about it. And that's why I demanded that Alex give me this command performance and draw this fantastic headshot of Lee Travis, I want to say, was the Crimson, right?
Yeah, I think early on in that story, that woman was in the window of her, tenement apartment, and I think she dropped her baby out the window or something happened, and the Avenger came up and grabbed the baby and saved the baby and handed it back to her mom, so she knew. Okay, so Len tied that in from the beginning into the end of the story, which was
excellent. Jimmy C wants to know any Web of SpiderMan covers stand out as personal favorites that you did.
Oh yeah, I mean there were some were really eye popping, fun for me to do. Especially, I'd have to say, Web of SpiderMan number 45. Which was in the desert. Spider-Man's carrying this airline attendant, and there's a silhouette of the Vulture in the sun in the background, which was kind of neat. Then 2 issues later, web number 47, which had a giant hand, whatever, of the Hobgoblin holding Spider-Man in his grasp, which was neat. Then number 48, right after that, I got to basically design the ugly face of the Demo Goblin as he's unmasking himself in the sewers, and that was fun. Then you had web number 50, which was a big circle, Spider-Man in there, and Puma, Sandman, Rocket Racer, Silver Sable. If I left anybody out, please don't. Any of those villains that I left out. Oh, Will of the Wisp. Yeah, that was another guy that one of these obscure characters. Moving on forward, I'm going to have to say there was. I'm sure there were guy numbers in the 40s. That was the 40s. In the 50s, yeah, there was some in the 50s. But without going through everything, I mean, there was another Web of Spider-Man number 93 that had the Hobgoblin on it with Spider-Man and Moon Knight. Moon Knight was a really cool character.
Oh, God,
really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then 5 was Venom and Ghost Rider and Spider-Man on that particular cover. That was really cool.
That's cool. Wes Stevens says he owns or owned the 67 Web of Spider-Man cover with the Green Goblin on it.
Oh, the 67. Oh, yeah, gosh, I remember selling that probably 20 years ago on eBay as one of my first, one of my first covers that sold for 4 figures, back then,
sure.
Which was, sort of, unbelievable considering that before eBay, I could make the mistake of selling things like way underpriced and then seeing what they were going for on eBay. But I remember, I think that the gentleman that bought that 67 cover initially was in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, I actually own the
I actually own, I suppose, the 45, so it's pretty awesome. You thought of that first. It's so great. It's been in my memory since I'm a kid reading it off the newsstand. There you go, Jimmy C. with a memory of the Web of Spider-Man 45 cover. So that's honestly, truly, it's not to age us, but it is so thrilling when people do posto covers, and it's like, I remember buying that off the newsstand. I remember going to my favorite drugstore that had a sticker rack and buying that comic and stuff. And it just immediately takes you back to those moments. And it's great that, people remember and want that stuff. So, yeah, and actually, Wes Stevens says that, he bought
it from that Canadian buyer.
Yep.
Yeah, going back, now that I think back, a couple of really popular covers that I did were number 68. 68 had me finally getting to draw Tombstone after having introduced him in Web 36 in 3 panels. And it was a whole issue where Spidey fought Tombstone, and at the end of the story, we get to blow him up. But you cannot keep a good villain down, so he came back. But it was 69. Web 69 had Spider-Man and the Hulk on the cover, and that was just a big, big fun-filled issue. Spidey and the Hulk in battle, and me getting to put my take on the Hulk. And then the issue after that, I get requests to do recreations, sketches at conventions of the Spider Hulk, where Peter gets gamma radiated there with a pinprick from this device, and all of a sudden he's still in the Spidey costume, but now he's got the rips all over and a bulging biceps and the whole 9 yards. People love that character.
Sure.
It's incredible. And then, of course, in number 100, the Spider Armor, the one and only time that we got to see the Spider Armor. And they made toys of it, and 7-inch toys and 12-inch toys and God knows what else. That was a really big popular thing. Pain in the neck to draw, though. Holy Christmas. People asked me if drawing the webs were a pain in the neck, and I said, nah, once you got that formula down that John Romita Sr. created, it's a piece of cake. I co-designed again that armor from a sketch that the editor Rob Tokar at the time had given me, and it was really basic. And so now, Nick, great to see. Nick, I can't smoke in public. It might give a bad impression to the kids. Parents don't want to see kids smoking. The whole 9 yards. But right behind me in my studio I still haven't had one of those cigars that you sent me in the box, but I've got a really good buddy here who also can appreciate a good cigar. He told me that I should go out and get this drying agent or whatever, humidifying agent called Bovina. So I got the Bovina and I stuck it in the box to make sure that the cigars don't dry out.
Sure.
And I'm going to be meeting with my buddy next week, and we're going to enjoy a cigar, and we're going to dedicate it to my good buddy Nick Kay in New Jersey.
That's beautiful, man. Excellent. We got to wrap up, Alex. But listen,
okay.
Everybody go to alexsaviuk.com for more examples of art. Again, the URL at Comic Fans is there in the crawl, and it's also in the chat early on. So definitely go check. And really, we're gonna work out with Bill Cox and Comic Art Fans a January show where Alex is going to add more to his gallery, and we'll sell more art. But check out the great work of Alex Saviuk. As always, Alex, continued success. Thank you for all the great memories of your past work, and keep up the great work on the Phantom and other work. And we're all looking forward to seeing you at Artist Alley and here online the next time you're doing something. So be well, and thanks a lot for doing this.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Take
Everybody,
care.
The next hour, it's going to be Scott Dunbeer and J. Scott Campbell having a conversation as the Comic Art Live online show continues this weekend. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for watching. Take care. See you later.
So long, everybody. Bye.